Most people believe their thoughts are just random noise in the mind, something that appears and disappears, something they have no control over. But neuroscience tells a very different story. Your thoughts are not random. They are training signals for your brain. Every thought you repeat is literally shaping the structure of your brain. This is called neuroplasticity. It means your brain is not fixed. It is constantly changing based on what you repeatedly think, feel, and do. And this is where everything begins. Because if your brain changes based on repetition, then your life is being shaped by repetition of thought patterns. Not just big decisions, not just external events, but the same thoughts you think every single day. If you repeatedly think, "I'm not good enough," your brain doesn't question it. It adapts to it. It strengthens the neural pathways connected to that belief. And over time, that thought starts to feel like truth. Not because it is true, but because it is familiar. And the brain always confuses familiarity with safety. Now imagine this happening for years. The same negative self-talk, the same doubts, the same fears. Each repetition is like carving a deeper path in your neural network. Just like walking on grass. The first time leaves a light mark, but repeated walking creates a permanent trail. That is exactly how your thoughts work. And this is the hidden reason why negative thinking feels automatic. It is not because you are weak. It is because your brain has been trained to think in that direction. But here is the most powerful truth in neuroscience. Anything that is learned can be unlearned, because the same system that created negative thinking can also rewire it. And this is where your transformation begins, not by forcing positivity, but by rebuilding the internal wiring of your mind. One thought at a time, one pattern at a time, one repetition at a time, and slowly, your brain starts to change. Not because life changed first, but because you did. Have you ever noticed? You don't choose most of your negative thoughts. They just appear. Out of nowhere. Before you even realize it, your mind is already telling a story. What if I fail? What if things go wrong? I'm not ready. I can't do this. And it feels automatic, like it is not even you thinking. It is just happening to you. But in reality, something deeper is going on. These thoughts are not random. They are well-worn neural pathways in your brain. Think of your brain like a forest. Every thought you repeat is like walking the same path, again and again. At first, it is just a small trail. But the more you walk it, the clearer it becomes, the easier it becomes to follow, until eventually it becomes the default route. And this is exactly what happens with negative thinking. Your brain chooses the most traveled thought patterns first, not the most accurate ones, not the most helpful ones, but the most familiar ones. This is why negative thoughts feel fast, instant, almost reflex-like, because your brain doesn't have to create them anymore. It just retrieves them. And here is the important part. Your brain is always trying to save energy. Thinking deeply requires effort, but repeating old patterns is efficient. So if a negative thought pathway is stronger than a positive one, your brain will automatically choose it, not because it wants to hurt you, but because it wants to conserve energy. Now this creates a powerful illusion. You start believing, this is just who I am. This is how I think. But I can't change it. But that is not identity, that is wiring. And wiring can be changed, because neuroplasticity proves something life-changing. The brain does not stop changing when you grow older. It changes based on what you repeatedly focus on today. which means every automatic negative thought was once a learned thought, and anything learned can be unlearned. Now let's go deeper, because understanding your negative thoughts is only step one. The real transformation happens when you understand this. Your brain is not fixed. It is constantly rewiring itself based on repetition. This ability is called neuroplasticity, and it is one of the most powerful discoveries in modern neuroscience. It means your brain physically changes depending on what you repeatedly think, feel, and do. Let that sink in. Every thought you repeat is not just a mental event, it is a biological signal. A signal that tells your brain, strengthen this pathway, or let this pathway weaken. So when you repeat negative thinking, worry, fear, or self-doubt, you are not just having thoughts. You are reinforcing circuits in your brain that make those thoughts easier to access next time. And when something becomes easier, you do it more often. This is how patterns are formed, but here is where everything changes for you. Because neuroplasticity works in both directions. If negative thoughts can be strengthened, then positive thoughts can also be strengthened. If fear pathways can be built, then confidence pathways can also be built. But there is one key rule. The brain only rewires what is repeated with attention and emotion. This means empty words are not enough. You can't just say, I am confident once and expect transformation. But if you repeatedly focus on calm thinking, if you consciously interrupt negative patterns, if you intentionally redirect your attention, then over time, the brain starts building new roots. At first, it feels unnatural because you are breaking an old autopilot system. Your mind will try to pull you back to familiar thoughts. But that discomfort is not failure. That is rewiring in progress. Think of it like carving a new path in the forest. The old path is still there. Easy, automatic, comfortable. But every time you choose the new path, it becomes slightly stronger, slightly clearer, slightly more natural, until one day, the new path becomes your default, and the old one fades in the background. This is how identity actually changes. Not through motivation, not through force, but through repetition and awareness. And the first step of change is simple. You must become aware of the thought before you become it. Because once you see the pattern, you are no longer controlled by it. You become the observer. And that is where real rewiring begins. Now that you understand how your brain rewires itself, let's talk about the moment that actually changes everything. Because awareness alone is not enough. You also need interruption. You need to break the automatic loop while it is happening. Here is the truth. Most people never realize. Negative thinking survives because it runs on autopilot. It doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't ask if it is true. It just fires. One thought leads to another. And before you know it, you are inside a full emotional state. Fear, stress, self-doubt, overthinking. But there is a powerful gap hidden inside this process. A small space between the thought appearing and you believing it. That space is everything. Because in that space, you have power. The power to interrupt, the power to redirect, the power to choose differently. But most people miss it because they react too fast. They don't observe the thought. They become the thought. So the first step in breaking the loop is simple. Slow it down. When a negative thought appears, instead of following it immediately, pause for a second and notice, this is a thought, not a fact. That one shift creates distance, and distance creates control, because now you are no longer inside the thought. You are watching the thought. And when you start watching your thoughts, you stop being controlled by them. This is where the brain begins to weaken old pathways, because every time you do not feed a negative thought with attention or emotion, you interrupt the reinforcement cycle, and what you do not reinforce begins to lose strength. At the same time, you must replace it. Not just stop the negative loop, but redirect it, because the brain doesn't like empty space. If you remove a thought and don't replace it, the old pattern returns. So you gently guide your attention towards something more stable, something real, something neutral or positive. It can be your breath. It can be your surroundings. It can be a simple grounding thought like, I am safe right now, or I am not my thoughts. This is not about pretending everything is perfect. It is about training your nervous system to exit survival mode, because people-pleasing, anxiety, overthinking, they all come from the same place, a brain stuck in automatic threat response. But every interruption tells your brain, we are not in danger right now. And slowly, the intensity reduces, the pattern weakens, and space opens for a new way of thinking, a calmer way, a clearer way, a more conscious way. Now we come to the most important truth in this entire process, because changing thoughts is powerful, but changing identity is permanent. And here is what most people misunderstand. You are not trying to fix your mind. You are not trying to remove every negative thought forever. You are learning how to retrain the system that creates your thoughts in the first place. And that system is your identity. Your identity is simply what you repeatedly think, what you repeatedly believe, what you repeatedly react to, what you repeatedly allow. Over time, these repetitions become you. So, if you've lived with negative thinking for years, it didn't become your identity overnight. It was built slowly, thought by thought, reaction by reaction, emotion by emotion. And this is the most powerful part. If it was built, it can be rebuilt, but not through force, not through pressure, not through self-judgment. It is rebuilt through consistent new input. Every time you interrupt a negative thought, every time you choose awareness instead of reaction, every time you bring yourself back to the present moment, you are doing something extremely important. You are updating your identity in real time. At first, the old identity will resist. It will feel uncomfortable. It will try to pull you back into familiar thinking patterns, because the brain always prefers what it already knows. But you are no longer that automatic version of yourself. You are becoming the observer, the one who notices, the one who pauses, the one who chooses. And slowly, something shifts. You stop reacting to every thought. You stop believing every fear. You stop obeying every mental impulse. And in that space, a new version of you begins to emerge, calmer, more aware, more grounded, more intentional. Not because life changed overnight, but because your response to life changed. And that is the real rewiring. Not becoming someone new, but becoming someone conscious enough to choose who they are in every moment. So remember this, your mind is not your enemy. It is your training ground. And every thought is an opportunity to rewire your future. Not someday, but right now, right here, in this moment.